like
we are live.
okay. This seems like the never-ending discussion of what to do with difficult juveniles. But here we are again on the topic list for hopefully the last time the month, at least in the month of February. And find my agenda here. Our first witness this morning is Steve Howard, the Executive Director of the Vermont State Employees Association, along with Renee Hamill, a VSEA member who works for the Department of Children and Families. So Steve, you're first up.
Thank you, Senator. Good morning.
Morning.
I, as you may probably already know, am not the expert in the room on this matter. Renee is definitely the expert here on all things DCF, but I do want to just share with the committee a couple of things that our DCF Family Services Labor Management Committee has put together as first of all, their top concerns, but really suggestions that they think the state needs to take urgently to address the current situation. And just to state, I think we all know what the problem is, but just to state it for the record for anybody who may not be aware, that since really the onset of COVID and the closure of Woodside, the system of care for Vermont's most vulnerable children has been severely diminished in terms of capacity. And at some points during that time, the number of beds available for youth, not just delinquent youth, but all youth, as Renee will talk about, she knows firsthand from her work, has been reduced by as much as 50%. And a lot of that is related to staffing, related to COVID, and just not having those beds that we did have at the Woodside facility. So the result of that is that DCF frontline staff have been continuously asked to step up and to really provide coverage for these youth in various settings, police stations, DCF offices, various locations around the state to try to make up for the lack of that capacity. And really, that is not something that they have a lot of training and a lot of expertise in. Residential coverage is not something that a lot of our members are trained to do. And I don't have to tell Senator Sears that it takes a special amount of training and special skills to be able to staff a residential facility. Which our members have really feel that that's not what they have. That's not what their training or their expertise really is conducive to. It's in a pinch they have been trying to do it to stabilize the system. Currently, the DCF members have wanted to convey that they are exhausted, that they're at their breaking point. And it's really evidenced by the high turnover rate in the DCF offices. The St. Albans District Office, for instance, is the second largest office in Vermont. That office should have 25 positions. They have been down by at least 14 in recent history. So I think this gives you a little flavor of what the challenge is. People, I think, are familiar with that challenge. And it really has impacted not just our members, but law enforcement and other partners that DCF Family Services works with. So the approach that our members really have come up with, the first thing they want to say is they are supportive, VSEA is supportive, our members are supportive of getting that facility in St. Albans opened as soon as possible. But they want to stress to the legislature and to the administration, which we have done. We have met with the administration, had a very productive conversation with them just earlier this week. We cannot wait for the St. Albans facility or a temporary facility to be ready in a year. We need something immediately, urgently. This is really reaching an out of control crisis where the fear is that something very bad is going to happen either to a youth in state custody or to a family service worker. We've already had one family service worker who was sexually assaulted as a result of the lack of beds in the system. Our members expressed to the administration earlier this week their very deep-seated concern that we're on the brink of something like that happening again. And they're trying to reach out to elected officials and people in power to resolve that before that, prevent that from happening. So the first thing that they wanted to stress is full weight of all folks in power, whether in the executive branch or the legislative branch, and coming up with an immediate solution as we explore the St. Albans facility and we look for a permanent facility for these youth. And it's not just delinquent folks. I mean, we're short of beds everywhere across all spectrums. We need a secure residential facility. We need secure placements. And Renee will go into some of that because she's really the expert on that. We've asked the administration to reach out to other states in the country, New England, to help with this crisis in the next week or 2 or 3 weeks to find beds for kids where there are no beds. We hope that they will incentivize the town of St. Albans, which has been at least open to the idea to provide some temporary capacity and to expedite that process as quickly as possible. We're really hoping that the administration, and maybe with the urging of the legislature, will fill all vacant positions and find ways to fill all vacant positions and incentivize the filling of those positions in family services because we need more hands to carry this load. We have also asked the administration to convene an emergency cabinet similar to what the governor proposed around some of the public safety issues that arose earlier this year in Chittenden County and around the state, to bring all of the departments together. Because one thing our members of DCF have said is they feel often that they're the agency that can't say no. And so many other agencies in state government or even the private sector often will feel like, well, DCF, they've got it. They got it under control. They'll figure it out. So if it's not something that in the final analysis, if the catch-all for youth is the Department of Children and Families. And what our members have said earlier this week to the administration and have said to their union is, we don't have this. We don't have this. You may think we have the resources to do this, but we don't. And we need help, all hands on deck. So we've asked for the convening of an emergency sort of task force, all departments, mental health, AOE, public safety, private sector, the hospitals, because the hospitals are often a place, emergency rooms where these youth end up when there's no place to go, has an impact on the hospitals. Just across the board, get everybody at the table to brainstorm solutions and to be in touch with each other so that everybody knows what the other knows. That is a problem we're having now. Some people have some information, some people have other information, but not everybody has all of the information. So we're hoping that we can expedite that legislature. We've also urged the administration to include the legislature in that discussion so that they are aware of what's going on. And then in just general terms, really increase the amount of reporting to frontline staff in DCF who are really at this point quite demoralized. They feel like they're in this alone, that nobody's coming to help, and that they're really they're on a treadmill that they can't stay on. And so we're hoping that by increasing information flowing to the frontline staff, it's clear that there is some hope that people who have power and resources are examining this problem and trying to find a solution. So one thing our members wanted to stress to the legislature and to the administration is we want to be, VSEA wants to be collaborative in this process. We want to work with the administration and with the legislature. We're not interested in pinning blame on people. We just want to find a way to solve this problem. So I think that's what I have to offer, and I hope that is helpful. Clearly, what Renee has to say is going to be much more valuable in terms of this discussion. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have, or I can get out of the way and let the person who really knows what they're talking about share her her many years of experience in the system for the Department of Children and Family.
I don't know how to open a facility, a short-term facility that is secure by both staff and the facility itself being secure in a real turnaround time. And I don't think anyone would disagree that the 3 years or so that it's taken to replace Woodside is untenable. And I do believe that COVID-19 did interfere with getting up and moving, but we're still back where we were when Woodside closed. So I certainly understand its impact. It's not been just the last 3 months, it's been the last 3 years. So happy to hear from Renee, but it's not just a short-term problem. It's been a long-term problem that every plan that the state had for establishing the short-term staff secure and physically secure program has not come to fruition. We thought that Sununu was going to be an answer, and it's clearly not. Anyhow,
that's right, Senator. We would agree with everything you just said. Certainly, it hasn't worked out the way I think people thought it would. I think our view is to looking forward. The thing we want to stress is that we can't wait. If the projection is that it'll take a year for St. Albans to be ready,
I totally agree with that. I just don't know how to replace. How quickly can we turn this around and make sure it is a priority? Because I totally agree with you. But anyway, I'd want to hear from Renee.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Senator. So thank you for letting me be here this morning. My name is Renee Hamel. I've worked for DCF in some capacity for 17 years. The first few years, I was a contracted staff through local mental health agency as a therapeutic case manager for youth that were in DCF custody. And then as a full-time staff of DCF Family Services, I did investigations and assessments. I had court-involved cases, juvenile justice cases, and in the last 4 years, I have worked at Central Intake and Emergency Services. So where all the calls for child abuse and neglect come in, and I'm a supervisor there, and we see it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, holidays, nights, weekends. So I just wanted to, Steve did a great job explaining, kind of what our concerns are. And Senator, I agree with you 100% that if we had a solution for tomorrow, I think we would all rejoice, and we don't. I think we're just, it has been a long 3 years, and looking even a year down the road is daunting. People are feeling like they just can't sustain with staffing these youth. So I just wanted to chat a little bit about the youth that we have staffed and kind of what just 2022 looked like. So in 2022, we, DCF staff, had to staff youth 63 to 65 times throughout the year, which really doesn't sound like a lot given 365 days a year. Those youth have typically been within like 11 years old to 17 years old, male, female. The vast majority of those youth have required 2-to-1 staffings, so 2 staff members per youth. And that's based on the behaviors that they were displaying and that they've historically been known to have. Out of those 63 to 65, some of those staffings lasted 5 hours. Some lasted an overnight until we could find placement for them the next day. Some lasted through a weekend. Some lasted 13 days. We had one that lasted 26 days. So our staff was providing staffing for these youth 24 hours a day for 26 days. And that's just not sustainable because they also have their regular day stuff that they have to do. The locations that we're staffing these youth are emergency rooms, police departments. In Southern Vermont, we have rest stop at Windham County Sheriff's. And then when it's not a warming shelter, we have Yellow House in Hyde Park. So they're not, it's not a residential placement, it's like almost like a little hotel room that, it's a room with maybe a microwave, basic necessity stuff. And we're excited about, a permanent solution to this, but like I said, when everyone's like, oh, it's gonna be another year until, maybe it's St. Albans that stood up. We're appreciative of all of that. We're appreciative of all of the ideas that have been thought of, but maybe didn't come to fruition. But our staff are getting tired, and everyone is just really concerned that given the behaviors of these youth, that something really bad is going to happen either to the youth, to our staff, to somebody in the community. And just to give you, this is available to you guys. Just to give you an example of some of the youth that we have staffed, and what their behaviors have been. So this one youth was placed at Mountainside, which is part of Windsor County Mental Health. It's a short-term residential. He was violent to Mountainside staff, threatened to slit the throat of a peer, punched a mailbox, causing an injury to his hand. So he was brought to the hospital where he had a mental health screening, didn't meet criteria for that higher level of care. So family services staff had to staff him because he was not allowed to go back to that residential placement. So there was no other place for that youth to be. We have youth that are possible victims of sex trafficking, substance use, their propensity to run or be a flight risk, aggressive behaviors like assaultive towards staff, family members. We had one youth that we had to staff that, really did a lot of harm to his grandmother, had a knife, broke his mother's wrist. It's these youth that our staff are having to be with throughout the night, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week when there is no place for them to be. I could go on. I have all 63 to 65 incidents here kind of laid out what the behaviors were of those youth that we're asking our staff to sit with. So we are, we're hoping to get creative and concurrently with the prospect of St. Albans, thinking of something that we might be able to do to support our staff and our youth until that program is available.
So, question for you.
Absolutely.
What are some of those creative things that the legislature can do to support you?
I don't know that we have answers, and that's what we're looking for is everyone, like Steve had mentioned, everyone to come together and put heads together from all different departments, and not just DCF Family Services. Maybe we could all get creative together, because as Steve mentioned, when we're staffing these youth, it's not just, family services workers. We know that every other agency, law enforcement, everyone is, up against the same things that we are. Lack of resources, short staffed. So, it's really all coming together. How can we support each other, and what can we do to keep these youth and our staff safe during these times?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. But I don't have, if I had a magic wand, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah, that was gonna be my questions. If you had a magic wand.
I think
Something
that's
to see
part,
through.
that's part of the problem I think you just identified, is that there are no easy solutions. I'm trying to ask um, either social workers or others who are not proficient in doing day-to-day operations in a residential setting, and at the same time asking them to do their other duties is just a way above and beyond. There may be some workers who have a history in residential. It's not generally the case. And the same is true of residential programs. Asking them to be all things to all people is an invitation to have trouble, because once you place kids who do not belong in a community-based setting, you run into problems. And so it's a daunting task. I don't know the solution in the short term, but I don't think I would agree with the state employees. I don't think you can wait a year for St. Albans or wherever it is. I didn't know St. Albans had already been the place, because that could fall through just as Newbury has fallen through. So we need to take some action right away, I think, in the next few months anyway. So,
Thank you, Senator.
are there any other questions for the State Employees Association? I think they've laid out the case quite well. And our next witnesses are from the Agency of Human Services. I believe they're online with Deputy Commissioner Radke. Is our first witness, and I'll let you introduce Tyler Allen, and Shayla Livingston are here, and Jennifer Fitch from Buildings and General Services. But Tyler has a slide presentation. I don't know how you want to handle that.
Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning.
What we were thinking we would do is just do a brief introduction and then start right away with the short PowerPoint presentation, and then answer any questions you all might have.
Okay. We got approximately 30 minutes before we have to adjourn to go to the floor.
Okay, so for the record, my name is Erica Radke, and I'm Deputy Commissioner of the Family Services Division of DCF. And I have with me Tyler Allen, who is our Adolescent Services Director for FSD as well. The BGS team is here also, and I would like them to go ahead and introduce themselves before we get started quickly with the PowerPoint presentation.
They're not on Zoom.
Are they not in the room either?
No, I don't think so. No.
Okay.
Or Shayla or Jennifer, none of them are here in the room or on Zoom.
Okay.
I saw someone who looked suspiciously officious sitting outside. Should I ask them if any of them need to be here? They had some badges on. You guys should probably.
Oh, yeah, I guess. They were outside. Hello. Sorry, where should we sit? This is a new committee I haven't been in before, so. Anywhere.
Find a spot.
Okay.
Well, then I'll move over here.
This is really cool.
Our vault. All right, are you gonna share your screen for the presentation?
Yes, Tyler's gonna do the driving of the screen. And what I just did is I introduced myself and Tyler, and I was hoping the BGS team could introduce themselves, and then we'll move quickly into the PowerPoint presentation because we have a short amount of time.
Commissioner Fitch, if you want to introduce yourselves.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So my name is Jennifer Fitch. For the record, I am the Commissioner of Buildings and General Services, and we actually have somebody else here with the Department of, I'm going to say DCF, and I shouldn't say that, Department of Families and Children's, but first Sabrina.
I'm Sabrina Karish. I'm the project manager for BGS.
Good morning. My name is John Deffinger. I use he, him. I'm the Director of Policy and Planning for the Department for Children and Families.
Great. So, Tyler, do you want to go ahead with your presentation?
I don't see Tyler anywhere. Somebody's here.
Tyler's not here.
I think I might be the one who would recognize him, and I don't see him.
Okay.
Okay.
If you'd like me to go do a little quick hunt out in the hallway and see if he's just missing out there also, I can do that.
Unless you have a.
Thanks, that would be great.
What's that?
I think he was.
Oh, he was gonna be on Zoom? Then that's good.
Oh, that's
The deputy commissioner's got this. She's done this several times now.
All right, he's joining now.
Okay,
Get on.
I could probably do this. I've seen the presentation previously, so
Oh,
maybe we could start. I don't know how to start here. Let's start with St. Albans. And what's it looking like there?
okay.
Oh,
Let's
maybe
see.
Tyler is online now. There I
Yeah,
see his.
he's online. Hey,
Okay,
Tyler.
good. Now we'll take it over to Tyler. Thank you.
Apologies for being late. Are we live?
We're live
live.
and we're on. We've gotten to the, you may do your PowerPoint presentation, but I think we're most interested in whatever you want to present to us, but we've got about 30 minutes, 25 minutes left.
Thank you so much. For the record, my name is Tyler Allen. I'm the Adolescent Services Director with the Family Services Division. I can share my PowerPoint. I have this up and running.
Yep, go right ahead.
Let's. All right, do folks see that?
Yep.
Great.
Tyler? All right,
Yes.
can you go on to slide 2 and I'll go ahead and just get started with the chart. I think that's important. So this chart here, it describes the current capacity in Vermont's high-end system of care. It generally reflects the in-state residential program categories from highest intensity, which is the secure programming, to the lowest intensity, which is community-based residential. And in each category, please pay particular attention to the difference between the blue column and the yellow column. These differences generally reflect the difference between what placement options are available today versus what was available in March of 2020. And essentially, the capacity currently has less than half the overall capacity than before the pandemic. And as you'll note, the state presently has no access to secure programming for youth. And that's really the primary driver for our proposal to develop a temporary secure stabilization facility in Vermont. And if you can go to the next slide. So factors leading to the need for stabilization include destructive or assaultive behaviors, mental health crises, placement disruption, concerns of risk to self or others, or the likelihood to run. And system impacts of high acuity youth in crisis needing stabilization include the need for greater supervision that reduces program capacity and creates log jams, possible disruption of programming, which can consequently reduces the capacity to address needs of that youth and other youth. And impacts on youth that include, that are absent a short-term stabilization program, the department is left to staff youth directly in alternate and potentially destabilizing settings. And I know that that's been some of the testimony that my team has discussed earlier today. And what we're looking for is a complete system of care that meets youth where they are and in the most appropriate and supportive environment. So the proposed plan for DCF's high-end system of care includes 4 primary types of programs: short-term stabilization, short-term secure treatment, staff secure crisis stabilization, and psychiatric residential treatment. And I'd just like to touch very briefly on the program type highlighted on this slide, which is staff secure crisis stabilization, which can be described as a community-based structure with generalized or specialized therapeutic programming designed to immediately manage acute crises for any youth. In terms of crisis stabilization, the department has embarked upon a really exciting collaboration with Windham County. We've been working with the Sheriff's Department to develop a dual use space. The first part of the location has been up and running since fall, and it's called the Rest Stop. It's a single bed space, often staffed by Sheriff's Department employees along with our family services workers, and it's used for very short-term stabilization pending placement. The second part of the location, which will be a staff secure crisis stabilization program, like I referenced in the prior slide, is currently in the design, contracting, and construction phase. It'll be a staff secure 2-bed program run by a member of the department's provider network. The focus of this program will be treatment and stabilization for youth in acute mental health crisis. And this is the part where we're really here to talk about. A critical piece of restoring our system of care is short-term secure stabilization, which involves a hardware-secured physical structure with generalized therapeutic programming. And it's designed to immediately manage acute safety crises for any justice-involved youth. And this type of program is intended to serve the youth really shortly, in most cases for fewer than 10 days. The purpose is to stabilize the youth and transition them to lower levels of care as appropriate. Secure short-term stabilization is important because such a facility will allow for us to care for these youth here in Vermont while keeping them and the community safe, while also providing needed expansion and flexibility in our system of care as a whole. Towards that end, BGS and DCF are designing and developing temporary solutions for an architecturally secure facility, which can accommodate the needs of up to 8 justice-involved youth of any age or gender, requiring secure treatment, education, and care. The teams have been working with architects to develop modular buildings and have conducted site analyses to identify the most viable locations for the rapid development of a temporary facility. These sites have been assessed for both existing structures and open land. The project emphasis is on physical security, therapeutic quality of space, and project timeliness. Because as you mentioned, Senator Sears, time really is of the essence in order to get a secure location for our youth, which is good for their health and well-being, as well as it's very helpful for my staff in terms of the staffing that we've been doing ongoing for the last 2 years. This facility is intended to be temporary in nature to meet the needs of secure stabilization until a permanent facility can be built. The department will be issuing an RFP for a provider to operate this facility. So in terms of outreach, in the short term, Commissioner Chin has been at DCF. He's invested a great deal of time and effort in outreach regarding our proposed short-term secure stabilization facility. Those efforts have included discussions with legislators as well as with officials in St. Albans Town. The DCF with Dr. Chin and Jeffrey Pippinger have also appeared at the St. Albans Town Select Board meeting this month. DCF and BGS are continuing to have ongoing discussions with stakeholders, including the town, and will continue to do so throughout this process. So what I'd like to do now is to turn it over to the BGS team to provide some additional project level details about our proposed plans for the temporary facility.
So just to give you a little background, so BGS has been asked to determined scoping requirements and permitting requirements to forecast costs and timelines to create the best therapeutic environment as quickly as possible. So we say temporary, but it takes BGS about 5 to 8 years to build a new building. So that's a fair amount of time. We looked at options throughout the state, including renovating our existing vacant buildings, renovating vacant buildings soon to be vacant by other state departments. We conducted a detailed scoping study with an architect of the former Windsor Correctional Facility to create a timeline and cost estimate. We also looked at repurposing some of our existing hardened facilities for the youth. And we also looked at the possibility of doing modular trailers at 7 different sites throughout the state on existing state-owned land. And so we came up with St. Albans as the most viable option. You want to, oh, where are you on that slide? All right. So these are just some examples of what a modular building can look like. We do have some restraints with modular as far as the type of space we can create and some characteristics of that space, but we will do our best architecturally to bring in as much daylight as possible, paint warm, therapeutic, neutral colors, just bring in as much connection to the outdoors as we can, which has been proven to help with the therapeutic environment. Switch to the next one. This is an example of the floor plan. This will create a completely standalone facility, so it can be placed wherever we choose without relying on a larger facility to support it. So this plan is about 8,600 square feet. It will be 8 single-user bedrooms with 8 single bedrooms with single-user bathrooms. It has classroom space, indoor as well as outdoor recreation space, an infirmary, kitchen, admin space, and staff space. BGS continues to experience huge swings in pricing and extensive lead times on building supplies and equipment. We're doing our best to forecast a timeline and a budget. Switch to the next slide. So we have this slide's a little old. We have 2 possible sites in St. Albans. This was the first site we had gone with. We're also exploring a site behind the facility, which is kind of cut off what would be about here. And so we are exploring both those options with the town, as well as exploring their other suggestions for other possible locations in the town of St. Albans. All I have.
All right.
Thank you.
Norris, a question or two here.
Senator Norris.
Thank you, Chair. These pods or buildings you're looking at, are these leased? They're going to be purchased through the state? How does that process work?
So we would purchase because of our time frame. 5 to 8 years is too long to lease from modular companies. They generally look at a 2 to 3 year lease.
And that was part 2 of my 2-part question. You stated 5 to 8 years to build BGS to build a building. What is the hold up there?
So we've forecasted this through various projects. It's basically permitting. St. Albans would, or most of our larger sites would include Act 250, and also community engagement takes a long amount of time. So we factor those things into our planning process. And Jennifer may want to add.
5 to 8 years is our normal timeframe for any type of AHS facility where it's a 24/7 facility. That is a very normal timeline for us. Again, typically it's about if everything was perfect and we didn't have to worry about site location, community engagement, and permitting, which are the big variables on the chessboard. It would be 2 years for design and roughly 2 years to build. Again, that depends on the size and scale of the facility. There is a request in the capital bill right now. It's a $1 million request to start planning a permanent facility. So the good news is that those timelines are running concurrently, which will hopefully reduce the overall time frame for delivering a permanent facility. But the other component of that is that they're looking at a campus style because they're looking at step down. And again, then that would mean more than one building. And again, contributes to that timeline of 5 to 8 years potentially.
So St. Albans happens to be in my area here, so that's my concern. So what's projected cost for the cost of these 5 to 8 years that we're going to put into these temporary sites while potentially building this other site?
We do not have costs yet. We are working with 2 different manufacturers in an attempt to determine that.
Thank you.
Senator Bahalski.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. One's about the modular sites. I know that we used those in Middlesex with some pretty horrific outcomes in terms of the buildings not standing up and being, duct taped together. Are we using a company?
So I can speak to that a little and then you can jump into Sabrina. So it's a different population in Middlesex that actually has held up pretty well. They were temporary units. They were only supposed to be in place for 2 years. Obviously, we're planning on an 8-year time horizon, so it's different. It's also a different population. And that means we're going to be using some different materials than we used at MTCR. That facility actually held up really well with the population that was intended. However, there was a short time frame where we did move the juvenile population there, again, different population. And you are correct. While they were there was quite a bit of distraction because again, it's about how you're designing those materials for the population that it's serving. And Sabrina, you're welcome to add to that.
I think.
Okay.
My other question, we've had a couple of colleges close recently that have empty campuses. Have we looked at repurposing those kinds of campuses that already exist? They may not currently be state-owned, but we could certainly look at purchasing them rather than rebuilding something new.
We have not looked at any buildings that are not currently owned by the state.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment or a question, I guess. We're looking at a year here, which, we just heard testimony from the State Employees Association that a year is untenable. And a year may not be a year. I can remember talking about the Windham County 2-bed program last winter while we were in session, and it still hasn't come to fruition. That's almost a year on a 2-bed program. So if it takes longer than a year and we're still in the same crisis without the without a short-term stabilization program that's physically secure, what's plan B, or is there a plan B?
I can respond to that, Deputy Commissioner Radke, if that's okay.
Oh, go ahead, and I also have a response, but go ahead, Jennifer.
So in terms of the building side, which is the BGS side, as Sabrina said earlier, we have looked at different potential solutions, and we are continuing to make sure that we're keeping all of those open. So if for some reason we have to toggle because we hit a road bump that we didn't anticipate, then we have other opportunities we could pursue. So we do have some backup plans if necessary. However, at this point in time, we are continuing to pursue module and we are continuing to pursue St. Albans.
Annika, did you have a comment, Deputy Commissioner
Yes.
Radke?
I would add to that, it is definitely time is of the essence. And in the meantime, we are working to issue an RFP for behavioral health specialists to at least come in to help alleviate a lot of the stress and strain on our staff while we are still doing these type of staffings at alternative locations. It's not a perfect solution, but it's something in the meantime that will help us try to bring down the pressure on the staff and also to try to give the youth some kind of stability while we are still waiting to get the buildings up and running.
Well, thank you. That would be a help. I did want to add one thing, and I think there should be more than one location planned in case St. Albans. I think St. Albans is almost ideal, but something might fall through there, and we should have some other plan ready to go and to replace it so that it doesn't take any more than a year to get reopened. And I would just, I think Dr. Chen said it best. Operating a child care, a DCF without a secure residential is like operating a hospital without an ICU. And that'll stick with me. And I think we need to move as fast as we can.
Mr. Chairman, I completely support everything you just said, which is why we do have other options. And we're ready to pivot
Good.
if necessary. The other thing to note about the modular units is that they can really be moved to any location. So the nice
Yeah.
thing about modular units is it allows us to pivot even though we're focused on, the actual units themselves and continuing to get those manufactured.
There were kids placed, I think it was St. Albans, Steve Howard may recall, where they completely destroyed, this was shortly after the closure of Woodside, and they destroyed the facility.
Yeah.
I believe that was modular as well, and maybe you can refresh my memory, Steve.
It was in a former office building, if that was all right. Senator
Yeah.
Sears, a former office building in St. Albans, and it was destroyed, and I think 2 or 3 of the kids escaped.
So the good news is, to give everybody reassurance, this is why BGS is partnering. We have all of the state-owned and leased facilities in the state. Sabrina is actually our expert when it comes to AHS facilities. She's just completing the mental hospital that is going to hopefully be open soon in Essex. She's also working on DOC right now on women's correctional reentry, and she's working on, obviously, we're partnering with DCF on the juvenile, both temporary and again, long-term. So we agree, but the thing that's really important to note is that you really have to design these buildings for the population that they're going to serve. And that's the most critical component of whether or not the buildings will be, and obviously the programmatic piece, which is DCF's piece, they go hand in hand together, but a successful model for this population.
Thank you.
I agree with Commissioner Fitch, and that's the good thing about our collaboration with BGS, and that we can, use those lessons learned from prior experiences when Woodside closed to make sure that the new modular building is appropriate for our youth.
Are there any other questions or comments from the committee?
I got a question, Senator, thank you. My interest, obviously you understand is, so am I to understand, and I'm not really sure who wants to answer this question, along with the pods and their removal, hopefully 8 years down the road, is this site also the site that we're shooting for as far as, shouldn't use those words, that we're targeting as far as the permanent facility, or?
So we haven't even started planning and programming at this point. So we haven't even gotten to site selection. The first part will be planning and programming to really understand what the requirements and needs are, as we talked before. Is this going to be a campus, right, where there's multiple buildings? Will this be, we're really just targeting one component of the population? So much of this needs to be basically evaluated in that planning and programming process. Once we're done with that, we will have a proposal on how we want to move forward with a permanent solution.
Okay, then that just eliminates my second part of my question. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Not seeing it.
Well, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. And committee, thank you for the hard work this week. And I'm sorry I missed yesterday and most of Tuesday. We'll try to catch up. Or no, I was there too. I guess Wednesday I missed.